A thread by Pat Scopoliti. 1 December 2020, MAGA Analysis released the Kraken, a war within the US government. This Lou Dobbs segment is from 6 November. It seems an eternity ago, doesn't it? And how many news cycles since? Yet, its clarity helps right now, these weeks later.
Let's go back to Hammer and Scorecard. Are those the names that you just used for those programs? What's being done about it, and how broadly were they used by vote counters in various states?
I think they were very broadly used, but not by the vote counters. They were used by the forces in the Democratic operatives that had access to these programs through the government access points that they have, and used it illegally to change votes in this country. It's got to be investigated probably by the president's most trusted military intelligence officials who can get into the system and see what was done. But we do have some evidence that that is exactly what happened. And they've used it against other entities in other countries. It's just been turned recently against our own citizens here to change election results. It's absolutely appalling that that can be done. And whether it's called computer glitches or something else, somebody has actually gone into the system and changed voting results.
That's called intervention in our elections, irrespective of, I guess if they were Russia or China, we'd refer to them as meddling. But it's intervention, and it's also crooked as hell, rigging this election no matter the jurisdiction, whether it's Michigan, Georgia, wherever it might be. What can we do about it? Because the Department of Justice, I mean, if there's evidence of that program, why not just turn it over to the Justice Department and say, and go to the courts and say, this has got to stop now. Here is the way in which it was done.
Well, we've been trying to get their attention, and we're going to try even harder, and we'll have to put it in a federal lawsuit, apparently, and get as much of it out as we possibly can. We have some excellent witnesses on the issue, but this is coup 5.0, Lou. I mean, there was no reason to think that the Democratic operatives who spent hundreds of millions of dollars creating the Russia hoax, the Steele dossier, taking us through a special counsel operation for 2 years, trying an impeachment hoax, the apocalypse hoax, the obstruction hoax, wouldn't go so far as to create every means of voter fraud they could come up with to steal this election. That's exactly what happens. The president must fight back now in every way, shape, or form. We cannot let this republic be stolen by the Democratic operatives who want to destroy the republic and make it a socialist country where they continue to line their pockets with these backdoor global deals like the Biden laptop from hell exposes.
Well, Cindy, I think you're exactly right about that not happening. Let's turn, Tom Fitton, you've pointed out in our discussions that these legislatures are Republican controlled. Who can take that message to them, and precisely how likely is it that they would be receptive to a clean slate of electors who would represent, say, the state of Pennsylvania? That's a Republican legislature, and stand up for the integrity of elections and support the president.
Well, you know, the focus from the media and activists and regular voters and citizens need to be brought to bear here. Certainly the information we're learning from campaign activists on the ground, independent journalists like John Solomon, the work of Judicial Watch should also be brought to bear. I mean, we knew going into this election in Pennsylvania, Lou, there were 800,000 extra names in the rolls in Pennsylvania. Nevada County has 154,000 inactive names on the rolls. Clark County, Nevada, I mean. So we've got this problem of dirty election rolls, mailing and balloting being allowed to draw from them.
And apparently a Republican Party that doesn't demand that those rolls be cleaned up. I mean, that's crazy. Could you put up that graphic again, please, folks? I want everybody to see what they're looking at, because this is really very important, what Tom's talking about. the control of both chambers of the legislature in these states that are critical right now in deciding who the next president will be: Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. They must play a role in this to preserve the integrity, just as Tom Fitton is urging. And Sidney Powell, what you're breaking here tonight is extraordinary as well. We've got to go. We're at that point. But thank you both for everything you're doing for the country and for the president. We appreciate it. Thanks so much. Up next.
Pat continues. Funny thing, it came up in a search for General Tom McInerney. I just completed my studies of his segment of the WVW interview this morning and was doing some research prior to this thread. Today's work covers 37 minutes and 45 seconds to 52 minutes and 30 seconds of that interview. We won't be following specifics or details today. For those, I refer you again to the 2 video links above. No, we're going to look directly into the face of reality right now, and the reality is not pretty. It's the worst of our lives and the worst of many generations. There is a war raging within our government right now. Please, like me, forgive yourself if that breaks your brain. A war within, as in inside the US government? A war? Perhaps it has been going on for a long time. I don't know yet, but I do know that it's going on now. I hope he won't mind if I call him LTG Mac. He explains to us in his segment precisely what the Kraken is. It is the nickname of the 305 Military Intelligence Battalion. LTG Mac tells us that there was a CIA server farm in Frankfurt, Germany. 305 against CIA skirmish. Imagine that. This is no longer psychological warfare. This is kinetic. Soldiers with guns fighting CIA operators with guns, and maybe they were American soldiers too. American soldier against American soldier. If you saw it in a sci-fi thriller movie, you would not believe it. Slow is the key here. Slow thoughts, and where possible, even slower emotions. Your mind was never prepared for this reality. It seems like pure fiction. Your mind is near certain to reject the information on its face. Say, what? Nah, no way, not possible. What? What? Who are the players in this war? First, there's President Trump. What has he realized? The entire government of the US has been infiltrated and compromised. He can trust no government employee. Work on that. Where does he turn? Well, of course, there is Sidney Powell. He can trust her 100%. Then next, there are parts, not all, of the military that he can and must trust. According to LTG Mac, again, Tom McInerney, the 305 Military Intelligence Battalion is one he can and does trust. Whom can he not trust? LTG Mac tells us the DOJ, FBI, and CIA. Forget Bill Barr, Chris Wray, or Gina Haspel. As if the heads of the agencies headed the agencies. Their figureheads allowed their jobs under contract to the cabal. What about the Pentagon? LTG Mac explains, without mentioning his name, that Mark Esper was let go and Chris Miller was hired as a direct result of this war. He explains that not only was Miller required for the Pentagon, but specifically for United States Special Forces Command. Let's simplify again. How do you stop a bad guy with a gun? With a good guy with a gun. Every Second Amendment opposing celebrity in the world employs security guards with guns. It's time we realize that the rule goes further. How do you stop a bad guy with a computer server farm? You stop bad guys with servers by sending in good guys with guns to seize those servers. Again, break your brain here, friends. The server farm was owned by the CIA. The good guys were 305 Military Intelligence Battalion, CIA versus 305. That was the fight. After your brain breaks, so also breaks your heart. You can believe me when I tell you I know. I am broken brained. I am broken hearted. My America was not a place where war could be fought within our government. I do not know this America. I do not know this era. What I do know is this sound. I know when we must admit the falling of the light, the dawning of the night, so that we may prepare ourselves for the coming day to arrive. We must prepare for the fight ahead. Here, however, is where we are now. What has died? What has fallen as the sun falls beneath the intervening horizon? The America where our government is a unified entity worthy of our trust as the safeguard of our freedom. More specifically, we may say our elections have fallen. This election has failed. I cannot attest to the accuracy of this map, yet my broken heart believes it. It purports to be a map that the servers in Frankfurt indicate. Consider the raw data in the server seized by the US military in Frankfurt revealed that Trump actually won 410 electoral college votes. Grief over our elections acknowledged. Let's return to yet another component of LTG Mac's horrible notifications. Fox was turned. I know this, you know this, yet hearing it from Lieutenant General McInerney is a nail in the coffin. I've lost my friends at Fox. That is a terrible loss. There is only one story in America today. It is the suborning of the 2020 landslide re-election of President Trump as stolen by the left. There is no other story that matters. But our Fox heroes are falling. What did Mark Levin do on his show on Sunday? He wore a nondescript baseball cap with a nondescript flag. What did he not do? He did not discuss the suborning of the 2020 American vote. Lieutenant General Tom McInerney is 100% right. Fox has been flipped. The loss to us in the MAGA movement is beyond measure. From server farms in Frankfurt to the psychological support we used to glean from Fox, the left has released the dogs of war in America. The war is no longer abroad. The war is here, now, and will not go away until we win or lose utterly. LTG Mac explains as well there are two levers that must be pulled before an election is completed. The first is the state legislatures, which must address the state level election local law. LTG Mac further explains no state elections are certified until its legislature has chimed in. So too with America. And the Supreme Court of the United States always has a vote. For instance, each state may abridge its federal obligation. SCOTUS is the place to adjudicate that. Here is the ultimate point of LTG Mac's comments. Our POTUS must stay in office until the questions of treason and coup d'etat have been fully processed. Try, like me again, to let that sink in. America faces the worst treason, the worst set of treasons it has ever faced. Benedict Arnold was a matter of child's play by comparison. Our government is at war within itself. War. War inside America. War. Do you want your mind to catch up? There are only two previous moments in our history that match. 1776, our Revolutionary War, and 1861, the Civil War. This war remains primarily a skirmish of cyber warfare. It is mostly not kinetic. Forgive yourself if you can't quite keep up. Your mind was never trained to imagine a war within the American government itself over a stolen landslide election. Be clear. President Trump won a landslide. Be clear. Our enemies within are dedicated to suborn it. In a war, it's not enough to merely face your enemy. You must also face the entire set of alliances your enemy enjoys. LTG Mac explains that. In addition to the DOJ, FBI, and CIA within, our enemies include China, Iran, and Russia. Be assured, the enemy without can never do the damage that the enemy within is so empowered to accomplish. Breaking news. Guidance just came in right now. I'll share it with you. Please take a break to read it in full. Press release. We the People Convention. We the People Convention calls for the president to invoke limited martial law to hold new election in full-page Washington Times ad if legislatures and courts and Congress do not follow the Constitution. Here is the key paragraph in full. Quote, while some debate these measures still today, no one disagrees that Lincoln and his use of presidential power were responsible for saving the Republic. While history and even former President Obama have judged Lincoln as perhaps our greatest president, few would have agreed at the time he took those actions. Then, as now, a president with courage and determination was needed to preserve the Union. Today, the current threat to our United States by the international and domestic socialist communist left is much more serious than anything Lincoln or our nation have faced in its history, including the Civil War. Not only will I need some time to, Pat continues, not only will I need some time to contemplate the breaking news, my business day will soon commence. I must turn to it. Not. But we're not done here. I will return soon as I can and finish up. Today is the day after. I have finally completed listening to the WVW interview. On the final minutes of that interview, the one word that rings out so loudly again and again is treason. Here we are, still in 2020, and we face treason at the highest levels of the United States government. Treason. In today's coming thread, we'll explore the why of that. Why should the highest levels of the US government betray us? The answer will rely upon weaknesses in our Constitution. The most important weakness is in the 17th Amendment. David Shestokas is my teacher. I dream to be a worthy student. We are here now. We must pay the Pied Piper his due. From shestokas.com, the 17th Amendment, Destroying State Sovereignty. As I previously mentioned, 1913 to 2016 is the era of American socialism. 2020 is the year we must decide. We did in a landslide election, but so sadly, that's not enough. We must also decide if we'll allow the lying liars their theft of our election. That's on us. That is what General McInerney is saying to us. The election was stolen. Joe Biden is put forward as president-elect. Fox News, of all media empires, was the worst. Will we allow Fox to destroy America? That's the question we face. Kate Scopoliti, Anthony, and I have been watching Fox since 2005 when we returned from Mexico. We watched CNN before that. Now, we watch no one. We watch fiction. We pray that fiction will end and truth, news, will return.
I will be the greatest president that God ever created.